SEP Fanfic Readings presents 1,000 Words by Olive Juice 28. Chapter 58. Last Round. The final game night was officially in progress, and the traditional noisy, chaotic clamor that accompanied it was in full swing. Hermione and Dean had decided that it was finally time to introduce their housemates to the ever-popular and often traumatic game of Monopoly. They had enlarged the board so that it was roughly 4 times its original size, in order to make it easier for everyone to read. It covered the entire coffee table, which all 10 students were currently sitting around. The cards, houses, hotels, and game tokens had also been enlarged, since the tiny plastic and metal figures would have gotten lost on such a gigantic board. Dean was the banker, much to Theo's dismay, until he saw the paper bills they were meant to use. After that, he insisted on sitting right next to Dean so he could figure out this muggle money nonsense. As often happens in a game such as this, several of the players were too nice and others were completely ruthless. By the time everyone had taken 6 turns, Theo owned Mayfair, which was in the most expensive color set, all 4 railroads, and both utilities. Neville and Draco were in deep negotiations as they had each had properties the other wanted, while Hannah announced that she only had £100 left, and Whitechapel Road, which was the cheapest property. Luna was building a small tower out of the houses and hotels no one had claimed yet, and Anthony was reading the rule book like it was a text he was studying for exams. In an attempt to keep everyone's spirits up amidst the badgering and bargaining going on, Hermione had prepared certain treats for specific milestones of the game. Whenever someone landed in jail, not just visiting, they got to pick from the Muggle candy assortment she'd compiled, a mix of both British and American brands like Snickers and Twizzlers, Maltesers and Squashies. If someone picked up a card and wound up having to pay money to the bank, they took a shot of fire whiskey. She had chosen that particular action because it seemed to be the least likely to occur repeatedly for the same person. Yet, somehow Padma was already 3 shots in and asking if everyone else thought the board looked wavy. Crisps and biscuits could be earned by being unlucky enough to land on a property that had houses or hotels, making the rent that much higher. As the game progressed, laughter, snarky comments, and good-natured bickering filled the space. Side conversations were had by those who'd been bought out or had simply given up, and eventually only the most serious players remained. Theo, to no one's surprise, owned 4 complete color sets taking up 2 sides of the board, each spot boasting 2 hotels. Dean had managed to wrangle one of the railroads from the dark-eyed wizard and had 3 hotels on each property in his 2 color sets, covering a 3rd side of the board. Draco and Neville had teamed up together as both of their cash limits started to dwindle and had successfully rallied to control the 4th side of the board, with 2 complete color sets and 1 utility they'd successfully conned Theo out of. They were in the process of placing a 3rd hotel on the Vine, Marlborough, and Bow Street spots, when Daphne piped up from her reclined position on the couch behind Dean. "If this is night game of the year, for last, does that mean the tallies get scored?" Her 4 shots of Ogden's clearly impeded her thought-to-speech process. Dean chuckled. "Yes, the scores will get tallied." "What will the winner win?" Hannah asked from her own comfy spot in the armchair nearby. "You have to wait and see," Hermione smirked secretively. She and Dean had chosen the prizes several weeks before, and she had to admit they were right good ones. While she was most positive first place would go to Theo, she knew any one of the housemates would enjoy it and appreciate the sentimental value. The game continued for another half an hour before Neville and Draco begrudgingly admitted defeat. In a series of maneuvers they couldn't rightly explain, Theo had foxed them out of 5 of their 6 properties, and Dean had stolen their utility. They'd had to sell off the hotels on the remaining property, Bow Street, and were left with just 1 spot and roughly £70, which was going to disappear as soon as they turned the corner and landed on one of Dean's investments. "Good try, mate," Draco offered his hand to Neville, who shook it in a very businesslike manner before they both snickered and shifted from their long-held positions on the floor. Both wizards stood and stretched and went in search of more snacks, as Dean and Theo got down to brass tacks of the game. They now each owned 2 full sides of the board and had roughly the same amount of hotels. Theo had a bit more cash, but Dean seemed confident he could catch up. Unfortunately, Dean's next turn found him with a chance card that demanded he go to the nearest utility, which was owned by Theo, roll the dice, and pay 10 times the amount rolled. He complained loudly when he rolled a 12, and had to hand over £1,200 to his gleeful opponent. After a dozen more turns, he had to mortgage most of his properties, and knew he'd never get enough back to win, unless they decided to play all night, which he wasn't quite competitive enough to suggest. Theo accepted his win with as much dignity as one might expect from the sarcastic jokester, only ribbing Dean twice with comments about beginner's luck and being accustomed to handle obscene amounts of money, which the amicable wizard took in good stride. Everyone helped pack the game up and put the common area back to its standard form, while Hermione scurried off to her room to get the prizes. Dean brought the scoreboard over to an easel he'd set up in front of the fireplace, and everyone gathered round. "All right, here it is," he grinned at his housemates, "the moment of truth." He took out a quill and added the points from that evening. The first person, Padma, to get out received 1 point. The second, Hannah, received 2, and so on, which meant Dean received 9 points and Theo 10. He then waved his wand, and the scores for each player were totaled. To absolutely no one's surprise, Theo won with 217 points. Luna was a close second with 211, and Anthony came in third with 198. Good-natured applause and cheers rang out amongst the group as the 3 victors took their rightful places in front of the hearth. Hannah started humming a rather off-key rendition of a familiar ceremonial tune, which everyone joined in on as Hermione approached the winners with a large basket in her arms. She gestured to Dean, who reached in and pulled out 2 medals, 1 silver and 1 bronze, both on braided ribbons of the 4 house colors. The bronze one had a 3 engraved on it, and was placed around Anthony's neck, while the silver sported a 2 and was draped over Luna. Each of them was also given a gift bag of candy and sweets, and their very own deck of Uno cards. Upon receiving their gifts, they each bowed theatrically, shook each other's hands and Theo's before stepping off to the side for the grand finale. Instead of a medal, Dean presented Theo with an actual trophy. The golden cup had 2 curved handles and stood atop a miniature plinth, in which was a small plaque that read, "Game Night Champion, 1998 to 1999. The cup was filled with treats similar to what Luna and Anthony had received, and Theo grinned broadly as he raised it up triumphantly. "I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who has made this possible," he announced loudly, making a show of getting choked up and wiping away imaginary tears. "To all of you who lost, time and time again, making my journey to the top so very easy." Everyone laughed as he continued. "All my life I have searched for something I could really succeed at, something to call my own, and I truly believe I have found it." He sighed deeply and placed a conciliatory hand on Dean's shoulder. "I have the utmost respect for each of you who have failed with such grace, who have been such shining examples of being good sports while being utter rubbish at winning." A cushion went zooming past his head as more laughter broke out. "There's still one more prize, Theo," Hermione interrupted, rolling her eyes and chortling as she handed him a rectangular box, wrapped in gold paper. His eyes went wide. Clearly he wasn't expecting anything else, and he handed his trophy over to Luna as he took the gift and started tearing the paper away. In short order, a brand-new Pictionary game was visible, and it was clear that the former Slytherin was rather touched by the gesture. "Wow," he said softly, all theatrics gone. "Thank you." He looked up and met Hermione's eyes and then Dean's with genuine gratitude, and surprised them each with a strong one-armed hug, since he wasn't willing to put the box down. "Right then," Dean clapped his hands together and grinned at everyone. "This officially concludes our 8-year game nights. But hopefully, in the next few days, we'll be able to give you all the specifics about starting up a new round in a few months." He glanced at Hermione, who nodded enthusiastically. "We'll be going to speak with Professor McGonagall on Monday afternoon," she told the group, "so we should know something by dinner that night." Everyone was smiling and nodding in happy anticipation. "I need a photo of the winners," Hannah exclaimed, brandishing her camera and waving the trio into place. As she went about her task, the others cleaned up the room, and then gathered in front of the fireplace for one more group picture, in which Theo insisted on holding his trophy as he stood front and center.